Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled Nlyte Remote Support Kit and Command Center. We're going to be covering the Nlyte Remote Support Kit, as it says, and talking about Nlyte Command Center. Today on our presentation, you've got Tim Regovich, who's the VP of Engineering of our new products and markets at Nlyte Software, and myself, Mark Ados, Chief Marketing Officer. So, why this particular short webinar? Now, we're recording this because a lot of folks are working from home because of the coronavirus. And as a result, we found that a lot of folks are experiencing spotty internet connection. So we thought we'd pre-record this ahead of time and send it out to folks. So this week, Nlyte announced in response to all these people working from home due to the coronavirus that we were going to be offering what we refer to as Nlyte Remote Support Kit. And what we're basically doing is we're offering Nlyte Command Center for free. And Tim's going to talk about what does Command Center specifically do. But if you're working remote, it has some powerful functions that will allow you to do your job more effectively. We're also additionally offering not only the software for free, but the installation services for free. So that's an additional benefit in that we want you to be able to get the software and install it completely for free. And additionally, we're offering online training to really expand the number of administrators that your organization has to work on Nlyte. So if you only have one person and maybe they're out, maybe they catch the coronavirus and aren't able to work, you can train some additional administrators to take care of Nlyte. Our focus was, how can we help people during this sort of challenging time? And so that's where the remote support kit came from. And a big part of it is Nlyte Command Center. And so I'm going to now turn it over to Tim, and he's going to talk about what are the requirements to use Nlyte Command Center.
Thanks, Mark. Again, as Mark mentioned, I'm Tim Regovich, VP of Engineering for our new products and markets. I'm going to walk you through here what the requirements are to use Command Center, and we're going to go into what does Command Center really do, what are use cases for this, then get you a little bit comfortable with how do you use it, what does it look like, what do you need to do to administer this, and the often asked question, what do I need to have on site to deploy this? So to start with, the requirements for Command Center are pretty straightforward. It's for customers of ours who are using Platinum or Energy Optimizer, also known as Neo, standalone. The base requirement, therefore, is Neo. You must be on version 10.5 or higher. We just released version 11 is our latest release. And this can only control assets that are being monitored by Neo, which is an important point. Next slide. So what is Nlyte Command Center, which I'm just going to refer to as Command for brevity going forward. Command provides device control to the Nlyte platform. It's an optional application that enables you to control any device that you're monitoring in Neo, whether it's local or remote. An important point to this as well is that it is integrated into Neo. So there's no real separate application that you need to learn to use. It's all very familiar if you're familiar with Neo. And it allows you really precise control over individual devices and the points within those devices. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about what the use cases are for Command. So these use cases that we came up with have been driven by customers who have actually been using this over time. So just a few that come up fairly regularly are things like changing a temperature set point and fan speeds. And why you might want to do something like this is that if you've got a remote site, you don't have much visibility or you don't have anybody physically there, some alarm happens on a Saturday night, some temperature starts to run out of control and your automation system, either don't have one or something's going wrong. It lets you set a reasonable set point so that you can deal with it when someone's actually in the office instead of having to deal with it as an emergency. It also allows you to control remote offices and data closets where you don't have IT staff on site. You can get down to even things at the building level of turning lights on and off to control remote office spaces. You can also set up your smart power strips to do hard resets down to the outlet level in case of failures of servers, which I know is a fairly common use case for this. Also helps you manage your edge locations. And then one that's come up recently, which is interesting, is locking and unlocking doors on racks for people who might not have the access to get in, but you have an emergency need for it. So those are the main use cases that we're targeting, but I'm sure you can come up with a lot more than this that people as they use it. So next I'm going to talk about kind of what does it look like? What are the features for this? The underlying features are that we support Modbus. For those familiar with this, we can set coil and holding register values. We also support SNMP, and that's much more prevalent for your smart strips. We handle everything from version 1 to 3. All the security around authentication and privacy is handled, so it's as secure as your environment is secure. It's very flexible, so you can set it up at a general sense, just like you can with any other Neo profile. So you can set it up once, and that takes effect for everything. Or if you have a one-off, it's very easy to change the settings for that particular device. We also let you set administratively point ranges, as I mentioned before. So you might want to limit remote fan setting so that you do want to allow people to access this remotely, but you really don't want anybody who's not on site to actually turn a fan completely off. So it supports that scenario. On top of that, we give you positive feedback of success and failure, so you know that what you did actually took effect. Then we audit every command that gets sent, and it gets put into the Neo logging, so you have a track record of what was set and who set it. And then we also tie in to the security group so that we can limit it to authorized users. Next slide. So what does it look like when you're using Command Center? It's actually very, very simple. When you enable Command Center and it's been installed, when you look at any particular device where you've set it up to allow commands, you have an extra button on the device details that which you can see here with the command button, which simply pops up a window that lets you set the value that you want, select the one that you want to set the value and hit send, and then the result comes back and tells you that it was successful. So very simple Neo integration. It also, when you hit send, it gives you the double prompt that says, hey, are you really sure? And it tells you what you're going to set it to prevent accidental changes. And again, the immediate feedback tells you whether it was successful or not, and then it logs it into the log for you. So it is that simple. There's really not a lot to learn here to get up and running with it from people actually using it. So then the question is, okay, that's great. That's easy to use, but what do I need to do to set this up? Well, that's actually pretty straightforward too, because it's built into the Neo application itself in a couple of ways, right? So it's only available through the Neo interface. There's no separate interface, and there's no ability to get to a separate interface. It leverages the device console to configure the commands, and that's what you see on the bottom screenshot, where you simply set the column that says command to yes, meaning that you can command this point, and the command values are the values that are in allowable range, and that's pretty straightforward. Either a dash to tell you a range or a comma delimited if they're very specific values that you're allowed. And then the upper left-hand side, you can see that it says Nlyte command, and that's how you restrict who has access to this functionality. And since this follows the same Neo security model, you can set that for any particular group you have. You can put it down to the room level. You can put it down to the device level. So the next question would be, okay, we've covered how easy it is to use and how easy it is to administer it. Okay, well, what do I need to do to actually get this set up? How many more servers am I going to need? What else do I need to do for this? Well, the answer to that is you don't need to add any additional hardware for this. The command center is deployed as two components. One is the web component itself, which sits on the same server as the Neo application. The command service is the second part of it, and that's just another service that runs on the polling agents that are monitoring these points anyways. So to set this up, we actually have a separate installer for this. It's a click-through installer for the web application that gets everything set up in IIS. You can configure it that way. We have this click-through installer for the standalone command. And again, as Mark mentioned at the beginning, we're offering the installation services as part of this. So even that should be fairly easy to go through. And then just as kind of a point of information that your networking team might ask about, the command center communicates to the polling servers on a separate port, which is by default 9090. So that might be something that might need to be opened. But again, all of this is documented pretty straightforwardly. And that is essentially that. For more information, as it says, you can reach out to your Nlyte account executive, or you can drop an email to sales, and we'd be happy to help you out.
So I have one question before you take off, Tim, which we talked a little bit about. What are there downsides of security, or is security an issue with this because you're getting into the world where you can actually control a device? How much risk is there somebody doing something stupid and turning too many things off? Like, what are your sort of thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a few points on that. So number one, when we first developed this as an application, the entire architecture was originally designed purely around security first. So things like limiting it to who has access in the first place is number one. The second thing is administratively setting limits on what you actually allow your users to do would be number two, which is a big part of this. The third part about it is that because it is not, even though it's packaged as a separate application, you can't get to it on its own. So there's no back doors that you can use to get into it. And then I guess the fourth thing that I mentioned earlier is you've got an audit log trace. So everything that happens, you can see the before and after and who did it. So from that aspect, we've kind of tamped down any security concerns that you might have around this.
So on the second item, in terms of limiting what they can do, why don't you give us an example just so everybody sort of understands?
Right. So one example I have is that if you've got let's say a fan speed, right? So fans you can turn off to however high you want them. You don't want people to turn the fan off, right? It's too risky for what you want remote people to do. You set it so they can only set it to low, as an example.
All right, sounds good. Anything else you'd add in respect to Command Center before we finish up here?
I think we've covered everything. As powerful as it is, it's pretty simple to set up, administer, and use. So.
Okay, great. So as Tim mentioned, it is on the slide here. If you're interested in hearing more about Command Center, just reach out to your Nlyte account executive, or you can email us at sales@nlyte.com. Again, our whole goal with this was just trying to help our customers, who many are now having to work remotely due to the coronavirus. So without further ado, I guess we'll bring this to an end, and everybody stay safe and stay healthy, and we'll talk to you on our next webinar. Thank you. Thank you, Tim.
My pleasure.